Playoff spots are up for grabs, regular season finales, and nine-man, unseasonably warm temperatures. What's not to love right now? Hi again, everyone. Jody Norstedt with Midco Sports, delivering another game ball sponsored by Farmers Union Insurance. And this week, the hardware is going to a young man who delivered a record-setting performance on our air Friday night. West Fargo's Parker Nelson followed his great offensive line and bruising fullback Josh Ballstead for a big night on the ground in the win over Legacy. We'll look back at his night a little later, but first, we have some top performers to recognize. And I'm going to be honest, we obviously show a lot of individuals on these lists each week, but it's always such a team effort, right? You know how it goes. The quarterback isn't going to get those yards if the receivers aren't catching and the line isn't blocking. The running back isn't racking up yards without the guys in front of him. Everyone has to play assignment sharp on offense and defense for guys to make plays. So when I asked for Hillsborough Central Valley's stats from the victory that snapped Langdon Edmore Munich's 44-game win streak on Friday, I was trying to get a top performer from that game. But how can you pick one? Scott Olson had a number of guys step up. Jace LeShook rushed for 93 yards and a score. He also had the lone catch in the game and turned it into 72 yards. Riley Olson was effective on the ground and the one long pass to LeShook. Gavin Mitzel had 2 rushing scores, while Parker Gallagher had a ho-hum pair of interceptions. So Burrows, congrats. You had a bunch of top performers this past week. Let's get to the other 10, starting with Bryson Clem of Cavalier. In a game where they knew every play would matter against 4th-ranked 𝗕𝗹𝗃, Clem proved to be a difference maker. The Tornado QB ran it 15 times for 188 yards and 2 scores. That's 12.5 yards per carry, by the way. Cavalier only threw the ball 6 times, but Clem did toss a touchdown to Trevor Hinkle and led his squad to the 42-20 win over the Patriots. The 3rd-ranked Tornadoes can win the outright region title with a win over Finley Sharon Hope Page on Friday. When scores filtered in at halftime on Friday night, I think it grabbed everyone's attention to see 3rd-ranked Shanley leading number 1 Century 7-0, thinking the 27-game win streak was in jeopardy. Well, then the Patriots turned it on and somehow made it a blowout, winning 49-7. Brady Dahl was a huge part of it, completing 6 of 8 passes for 150 yards, rushing for 130 more, and totaling 5 touchdowns in the game. The Patriots continue to impress. They get rival Bismarck on Friday. I've talked about how Davies was officially eliminated from playoff contention back in week 4, but that seems to have just lit a competitive fire under them. The Eagles knocked off Mandan 27-21 in overtime Friday night to improve to 4-0 against WDA opponents. Dylan Feldner played arguably his best game as an Eagle, completing 14 of 18 pass attempts for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran the ball 20 times for 81 yards and 2 more scores, including the walk-off game winner. Big props to his O-line and backs, too. More on one of the Eagles' defensive stars in a moment. Beulah had arguably its biggest challenge of the season, taking on Shiloh Christian, and senior running back Amari Gilmore powered them to victory. Look at this 6-foot, 220-pounder show off a great combination of power and speed. Gilmore rushed for 206 yards on 26 carries, crossing the goal line twice in the 39-22 win over the Skyhawks. Miners inching closer to the region title and maybe a number 1 overall seed. To the 9-man ranks, New Rockford Cheyenne went crazy when Bo Belquist scored a touchdown for UND in the rivalry game with NDSU over the weekend. The night before, they were celebrating Caden Jensen, who rushed for 265 yards and 3 scores in a dominant 53-14 victory over TGU. After an 0-2 start, the Rockets have taken off. They have won 5 straight. This stat line will raise some eyebrows. Ray Powers Lake cruised against an Alexander team struggling in its transition from 6-man back to 9-man football. Tyler Lindstrom hit on 15 of his 19 passes for a whopping 503 yards and 7 touchdowns. Tyson Inget and Jace Nelson each with a pair of touchdown catches in the blowout win. We never get enough defensive players nominated because it's always hard to track down stats, but this guy's line was hard to ignore. Denver Pekowski was all over the place in Davies' overtime win over Mandan. He finished with 6.5 tackles for loss, including 5 sacks. The biggest sack of the night came in overtime. Mandan had a 3rd and goal from the 2, and 𝗕𝗹𝗹 sacked Max Carlson for the 5th time on the night. We'll have Davies on our air a week from Friday when the Eagles visit Fargo North. The last month has brought plenty of adversity for 𝗕𝗹𝗹 Burlington with their starting quarterback Carson Yale going down with a serious leg injury, but running back 𝗕𝗹𝗹 has stepped up. On Friday night in the 46-8 win over West Hope Newburgh Glenburn, Rist popped off for 193 rush yards and 2 touchdowns. He has been terrific this season. So has this next young man. Central Cass's 𝗕𝗺𝗺𝗃 put up numbers that would make a math teacher excited. He rushed for 196 yards on 14 carries, which happens to be 14 yards per carry. Math nerds unite. He also scored 4 touchdowns in the win over 𝗕𝗹𝗹. The Squirrels improved to 6-1. Grant County Flasher locked up a playoff spot on Friday with a win over Richardson Taylor Hebron, and Leighton Woodbury was the best player on the field. 19 carries, 173 yards, and 4 touchdowns, plus a receiving touchdown. The junior also made a couple tackles for loss on defense for the Storm. All right, now let's talk about our game ball winners, sponsored by Farmers Union Insurance. If you were watching Midco Sports Friday night, you saw Parker Nelson and the West Fargo rushing offense put on a clinic. Listen to this turnaround though. Through the first 3 weeks of the season, Parker Nelson had just 83 yards on 30 carries with 2 rushing scores. Now keep in mind, he faced a couple of elite rushing defenses early in Cheyenne and Century, the 2 top teams in the state. As for the most recent 3 games, Nelson has 673 yards on 83 carries for 9 touchdowns. He is averaging 224 yards and 3 touchdowns over the last 3 games. Here's a look at him rushing for a school record 273 yards in Friday's win over Legacy. Of course, he had 2 touchdowns too. Think about this. He set a school record for a program that has also produced the likes of Bison legend and now offensive coordinator Tyler Roll and current Northern State standout Chase Teichen. Pretty good company. And after the game, Parker quickly gave praise to his offensive line and all-state caliber fullback Josh Ballstead. Ballstead was blowing holes wide open all night. Fun to watch. It's a thankless position, but Ballstead has just as much to do with the recent success as Nelson does. So congrats to Parker and the Packers, who will try to win a 4th straight game this Friday at Red River. Thanks to everyone for watching. We'll see you Friday night at 10:30 right here on Midco Sports for 𝗕𝗺𝗃𝗍𝒻𝒀💻 Sports Live.